Please, Mom, just sign here. Jessica cooed. And that's how a Tuesday at 3:15 p.m. turned into a hostage situation with snacks and fluorescent lighting. The bank smelled like lemon cleaner and bad decisions. Somewhere a cash counter chattered like cheap applause. And the AC rained cold air on the back of my neck. I'm Eleanor Brooks, 69, widow, coupon sniper, and, for far too long, the family ATM with a pulse. Today my daughter Jessica pressed a pen into my fingers as her husband, Marcus, clamped down on my forearm, smiling for the security camera like we were auditioning for America's Nicest Relatives. It's just routine, Mom, Jessica sang, the same voice she used at 5 when she wanted a cupcake for breakfast. A teeny transfer so we can tidy some paperwork. Teeny. The stack of documents could have stopped a ceiling fan. I'd read enough to know the truth. This wasn't tidying. This was a vacuum cleaner aimed at my last $30 of savings. Everything left after my husband Peter's insulin specialists, and the funeral lilies that made my house smell like a polite cemetery. Marcus leaned in, coffee breath and cologne elbowing each other for first place. Come on, Eleanor, don't make a scene. His smile said, family. His grip said, wrench. I glanced around. A college kid behind the teller window was pretending not to notice us. A man in an expensive suit scrolled his phone like he'd paid to ignore emergencies. A silver-haired lady thumbed an insurance brochure as if the font size could save her. I used to say yes. I said yes to Jessica's pink bike, to her private college, to the wedding with the ice sculpture that looked like a melting swan with anxiety. I said yes to the house down payment when their credit score looked like a body temperature. I even said yes to Marcus's temporary unemployment, which lasted exactly until he was temporarily employed again and permanently allergic to repayment. My hand trembled. The pen hovered over a line that could finish me. The black ink looked final in the way night looks final when you're lost. Think of Lily, Jessica whispered, sweet perfume frosting her words. Your granddaughter deserves stability. There it was, the master key to every locked door in my spine. Lily, 8 years old, with eyes that asked big questions and drawings that made my arms look like sequoias. I swallowed, and the room tilted. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am also a person. It was news to me. A throat cleared. Mr. Harris, the bank manager, a steady man with a tie that meant business and laugh lines that meant life, approached our little storm with a professional smile. Everything all right here? Anything I can help with? Yes, I said, but my voice came out like a brittle leaf. Jessica squeezed my shoulder, warning disguised as affection. While they basked in their own patience, I slid a deposit slip toward me, pretended to confirm an account number, and, hands shaking, printed 3 tight sentences, help. I'm being coerced. I do not consent. I angled the slip toward Mr. Harris. Our eyes met. His change, the way a sky changes before rain. Why don't we verify this in my office? He suggested lightly. As if offering gum. That's not necessary. Jessica said too fast. Mom already decided, didn't you, Mom? Marcus's fingers pinched. My skin thrummed. Bank policy, Mr. Harris replied, calm as a held piano note. He gestured toward a hallway. 2 security guards in suits that tried to look like furniture edged closer. All politeness and quadriceps. I stood. For the first time, Marcus had to let go. His hand fell, and I could feel my blood return in a hot, prickly wave. Jessica's smile flickered, the mask slipping a centimeter. Mom, she hissed softly, don't be dramatic. Dramatic? My arm wore the imprint of her marriage like a watermark. Mr. Harris' office was small and tidy, with a cactus on the sill and a photo of kids who looked like they'd never even heard of an overdraft. He shut the door gently, sat, and said with the soft authority of a good teacher, Mrs. Brooks, tell me what's really happening. Something in me cracked open. Not a scream, more like a hinge finally oiled. The words came, the years of just this once. The down payments, the loans that weren't loans, the promises that evaporated like steam, the grip on my arm. The sugar-coated threats, the way love had been weaponized with Lily's name on the blade. Mr. Harris listened, no interruptions, just a pen moving quietly. A nod when my voice shook. When I was empty, he set the pen down. This is financial coercion, he said. It may qualify as elder abuse. Here's what we'll do. Cancel the transaction. Flag your accounts. Require in-person verification for anything over $20 if you like. He almost smiled. And if they pressure you again, we'll have it documented. My lungs remembered how to be lungs. It felt like the first breath after forgetting you were underwater. He slid a card across the desk, his direct line, then tapped something beneath the edge. I didn't hear a sound. But the air changed, the way it does right before a storm decides who it's going to be. On the other side of the glass, I could see Jessica pacing, Marcus vibrating with polite fury. Somewhere a printer whirred like a cricket with a grudge. I thought of Peter. Fear is a tool, he'd said once, watching a show about scams. If you don't use it, they will. I straightened in my chair. My hands steadied. I was not ink on their line. I was the hand holding the pen. Mr. Harris opened the door, and the guards shifted into place, right as Marcus stood up. Jaw tight, and said the one sentence that told me this wouldn't end at the bank. Then we'll do it our way. Marcus's words sliced through the bank's polite hum like a glass breaking in a church. Then we'll do it our way. For a second, nobody moved. The guards flanked him, calm but ready, their hands hovering near their belts as if to remind him that this wasn't his living room. Jessica reached for him, whispering, "Marcus, not here," but his eyes were locked on me, cold and sharp, like he was measuring exactly how much pressure it would take to make me fold. I had seen those eyes before, the night he came to my house, asking for a little help with his car payment. The same eyes when he took my check for Lily's ballet costumes, swearing he'd pay me back next payday. The same eyes I had pretended not to notice when he stood too close, smiled too wide, and spoke too soft. A predator in khakis. "Mrs. Brooks has made her decision," Mr. Harris said, his voice firm but professional. He was the only man in that room who didn't flinch. "And this transaction is cancelled. Permanently." Jessica's face twisted, trying to hold two expressions at once, sweetness for the cameras and fury for me. "Mom, you don't understand. This is for Lily, for your granddaughter." Her voice broke, like she was auditioning for a soap opera. "She'll lose her school, her friends, everything you worked so hard for." I almost laughed. I almost cried. Instead, I said the words I had never dared to say in 35 years of motherhood. "Then you figure it out, Jessica, because I am done." Her mouth opened, then shut again, like a fish realizing the bait wasn't free anymore. Marcus stepped forward, his fist flexing, but the guards moved instantly. Their shoulders squared like brick walls with badges. For the first time, he hesitated. "This isn't over," he hissed, his fake smile returning for the benefit of the room. He leaned down so only I could hear, "You're going to regret this, Eleanor." I looked him dead in the eyes. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid, not as much as you will, Marcus. The guards escorted them toward the door. Jessica turned once, her green eyes blazing with something I didn't want to name. Hatred? Desperation? Both? She clutched Marcus's arm like a woman holding on to her last illusion. And just like that, they were gone, out the glass doors, into the parking lot, shrinking against the bright afternoon sun. I sank into a chair in the waiting area. My legs shook, not from fear this time, but from the release of decades of tension. My whole life I had been the yes woman, the rescuer, the fixer. Today, I had said no. Mr. Harris sat beside me, his tie slightly askew, his expression kind. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about it, really thought about it, then I whispered, "Scared." I paused, "But free." It was the truth. Freedom is terrifying when you've spent your life in chains you forged yourself. Somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Jessica would call, Marcus would threaten, they would try new tricks. But something inside me had shifted. Something that couldn't be shifted back. I looked at the business card in my hand. Mr. Harris number. And for the first time in decades, I realized I had something more powerful than guilt. More powerful than obligation. I had allies. I had choices. I had myself. That night, my phone rang every hour. Jessica's name flashed on the screen again and again, like a siren in the dark. And when I didn't answer, the messages began. The first message was syrupy sweet. Mom, I know you're upset, but let's talk. We can work this out. Lily misses you. The second came 30 minutes later. Her voice thinner, sharp at the edges. Mom, ignoring me isn't going to fix anything. We're family. You owe us that much. By midnight, the sweetness had curdled into acid. Fine, if you want to throw your family away. Don't be surprised when we throw you away too. I sat in the dark of my living room, the glow from the phone screen painting my wrinkles in cold light. Each message was a different costume for the same monster: manipulation. Guilt, fear, shame. Jessica had them all on speed dial. I pressed delete. One, then another. By dawn, my voicemail was empty, but my heart still carried the echo of every word. The next day, the texts started. Mom, Lily asked why you hate us now. Mom, Sebastian says he didn't mean to hurt you. He just gets nervous sometimes. Mom, you've always been the strong one. Don't let strangers at a bank poison your mind. I stared at those words, my fingers itching to type back, to defend myself, to scream, but then I remembered Mr. Harris' steady voice. Are you ready to say no? Yes, I was. On the third day, there was no phone call, no text, just a sound at my door, knocking. Relentless, the kind of knocking that belonged to debt collectors or preachers convinced you were going to hell. I peeked through the curtain. Jessica in a yellow dress, the color she knew was my favorite. Marcus with his best fake smile. And between them, my granddaughter Lily, holding a crayon drawing against her chest. My heart clenched. It was one of those giant grandma pictures, me with long arms stretched wide. Lily tucked safe inside. She looked up at the house with expectation, hope glowing in her little face. Grandma? I heard her small voice through the glass. Why won't you open the door? Did I do something wrong? Every bone in my body screamed to run, to scoop her up, to tell her none of this was her fault. My hand even brushed the doorknob. But then Jessica's voice cut through. Mom, don't be childish, just open up, we can settle this. The doorknob turned cold in my palm. This wasn't a visit, it was a performance. Lily was the bait, and I was the fish who'd spent 69 years biting hooks disguised as kindness. My chest tightened. I backed away from the door. Jessica rang the bell for 10 minutes, each chime like a hammer on my ribs. Lily's voice broke my heart a second time. Mommy, why doesn't Grandma want to see me? I pressed my back against the wall, slid to the floor, and covered my ears. Then I reached for Peter's old radio, the one he'd given me for our 30th anniversary, and turned up the classical station until violins drowned out the sound of betrayal on my porch. An hour later, silence. They were gone. But the silence wasn't peace. It was a war. That night, my sister Margaret called, and what she said made me realize Jessica was already rewriting the story, casting me as the villain. Eleanor, Margaret's voice crackled through the line, dripping with that mix of concern and condescension only younger sisters can perfect. I just talked to Jessica. She says you've gone paranoid. I closed my eyes. Of course, my daughter wasn't just knocking on my door, she was knocking on my reputation. She told me, Margaret continued, lowering her voice as though she were about to reveal state secrets, that you think they're trying to steal from you. She says you even made a scene at the bank. A scene. My bruised arm pulsed under my sweater like it wanted to raise its own objection. Margaret, I said carefully, did Jessica also tell you her husband grabbed me hard enough to leave marks? Did she mention I had to pass a secret note to the bank manager begging for help? There was a pause, long enough for me to imagine my sister frowning into her glass of Chardonnay. She didn't say that, Margaret admitted. No, I said bitterly, she wouldn't. I explained, the forced signatures, the money, over $100,000 across 10 years, the threats behind the smiles, the bruise blooming on my skin like a confession. Margaret went quiet. Finally she sighed. But Eleanor, she's your daughter. Families help each other out. There it was, the family anthem, a song that sounded sweet until you realized it was being used to drown you. Families help each other, I agreed. But this isn't help. This is exploitation. The word tasted sharp, foreign, but right. Exploitation, not sacrifice, not love. Margaret tried to patch the silence with her gentle voice. Maybe it's not as bad as you think. Maybe you're just tired. I almost laughed. Tired? Yes, I was tired. Tired of being wrung out like a dish rag. Tired of confusing manipulation with devotion. Tired of bleeding my life dry to keep someone else afloat. We hung up politely, but I could feel the divide opening like a canyon between us. Jessica had gotten to her. She was shaping the narrative, painting me as unstable, paranoid, confused. That night, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the stack of bills I had sorted that morning. My husband's absence echoed in every corner. His chair still pulled neatly to the table. Peter would have said, "Don't let them scare you, Eleanor. Fear is how they win." But fear wasn't the only weapon. Guilt was sharper. And Jessica knew how to wield it better than anyone. The next afternoon, there was a knock at my door again, but this time, when I peeked out the window, it wasn't Jessica, it was Lily, alone. Through the curtain, I saw her, Lily, 8 years old, pink backpack strapped to her shoulders, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, standing alone on my porch as if she'd just wandered out of a storybook. My heart jumped to my throat. Jessica hadn't come. Marcus wasn't lurking behind her. Just Lily, shifting her weight from foot to foot, clutching something flat and colorful to her chest. I opened the door before my brain could tell me not to. "Hi, Grandma," she said, her little smile so genuine it felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Can I come in? Mommy says you're mad at us. But I didn't do anything wrong. Did I?" I dropped to my knees, swallowing the lump in my throat. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Grandma isn't mad at you." Her shoulders relaxed. She held up the drawing she'd been carrying. A crayon portrait of me, tall, with arms stretching wide enough to hug the whole page. But this time, the smile on my face was missing. Instead, she had drawn me with tears. "Why is Grandma sad in your picture?" I asked softly. "Because Mommy says you're sad," Lily answered with the blunt honesty of children. "She says some bad men at the bank told you things that confused you." "Is that true, Grandma? Are there bad men?" "Oh," Jessica, twisting the truth like origami, even using her own daughter as the delivery service. I pulled Lily into my arms. "No, sweetheart, there aren't bad men. There are good people who helped me when I needed it. Sometimes, adults just see things differently. Like when you and your friend look at the same cloud, one of you sees a cat. The other sees a dog. Neither is wrong, just different." Her brow furrowed, then she nodded slowly, satisfied with the explanation. We spent an hour at my kitchen table coloring together. For those 60 minutes, it almost felt normal. Almost. She giggled when I accidentally colored outside the lines, insisting I was silly. I forgot, just for a breath of time, that her parents had turned her into a pawn. But when she packed her crayons back into her backpack, she asked the question that shattered me. "Grandma, you're not going to give me money for ballet class anymore?" The air left my lungs. Even at 8, Jessica's lessons had sunk in. Grandma equals money. Love equals money. I took her hands. "Lily, do you love me because I buy things for you, or because I'm your grandma?" She tilted her head, puzzled. "Both. Mommy says you're the best grandma because you always help us. That's why I love you lots." I kissed her forehead, fighting tears. Jessica had taught her daughter the same poison she'd fed me. That love was a transaction, not a truth. When a car horn honked outside, Lily jumped. "That's Mommy." She hugged me quickly, shoved her drawing into my hands, and ran out the door. I stood frozen in the doorway as Jessica's car pulled away, its tinted windows swallowing Lily whole. I looked down at the drawing in my hand, giant grandma with arms wide enough to hold everything, face wet with crayon tears. And I realized, if I didn't break this cycle, Lily would grow up believing love had a price tag. That night, staring at Lily's drawing, I made a vow. I would teach my granddaughter a different lesson about love, even if it meant breaking my daughter's heart. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Lily's drawing spread out before me. The little crayon version of myself, giant arms, teardrop face, looked back like a mirror I couldn't escape. I traced the shaky lines with my fingertip. If I don't end this now, she'll grow up believing what Jessica believes. That love is measured in dollar bills instead of hugs. That family means manipulation instead of safety. The thought made my stomach twist. I couldn't let Lily inherit this curse. The phone rang, slicing through the quiet. Jessica's name flashed across the screen. My hand hovered over the receiver. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. Her voice was soft, rehearsed, dripping guilt. "Mom, we need to talk. You can't just shut us out." Lily's confused. "She cried herself to sleep last night because you wouldn't open the door." My jaw clenched. "Jessica, don't use your daughter's tears to wring money out of me. I won't allow it anymore." She gasped theatrically, as if I'd slapped her. "Money? Mom, this isn't about money. This is about family. About us. Why are you letting strangers at the bank turn you against your own blood?" Strangers. Mr. Harris, the man who saved me in that office, was more of a protector than my own child. "You tried to take everything I had left," I said flatly. "That's not family. That's theft with better lighting." Jessica's mask slipped, her voice tightening. "Fine, if that's how you want to see it. Don't call me when you're old and alone. Don't call when you need groceries or help with your medicine. Because we won't be there." For a moment, the fear pricked sharp. The vision of an empty house. My body fragile. My phone ringing with no one to answer. But then Peter's words whispered back. "Fear is their weapon. Eleanor, don't load it for them." "I'll manage," I said, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. "And if that's what it takes for me to keep what's mine, so be it." There was silence on the other end. Then, a cold, measured reply. "This isn't over." The line went dead. I sat in the stillness. The hum of the refrigerator loud in my ears. For the first time in decades, I'd chosen myself. It felt terrifying. It felt glorious. I folded Lily's drawing carefully, placed it on the fridge with a magnet, and whispered, "One day, sweetheart, you'll know the truth." But the truth came knocking sooner than I expected, this time. Carried not by Jessica, but by my sister Margaret, who arrived at my door with questions I wasn't ready to answer. The next morning, a sharp knock rattled my front door. Not the frantic pounding of Jessica. Not the timid tapping of little Lily. This was firm. Practiced, like someone announcing authority. Through the peephole, I saw Margaret, my younger sister, hair perfectly set, lipstick immaculate, standing there with her purse tucked under one arm as if she were about to conduct a board meeting. I opened the door, bracing myself. "Well," she said, sweeping into the living room without waiting for an invitation. "You certainly have the neighborhood talking." "Good morning to you too," I muttered, following her. Margaret sat down, crossed her legs, and gave me that look, the one she used in high school when she caught me sneaking cookies before dinner. Only now, instead of cookies, it was my entire sanity on trial. "I spoke to Jessica last night," she began, smoothing the hem of her skirt. "She's very upset. She says you embarrassed her at the bank. That you've become irrational. Paranoid, even." I let out a bitter laugh. "Paranoid? Margaret, they tried to steal every penny I have left." Marcus bruised my arm. I pulled up my sleeve, showing the faint shadow still blooming there. Her eyes widened. For a flicker of a second, she looked shocked. Then, just as quickly, her expression softened into doubt. "Eleanor, maybe you misunderstood. Stress can do funny things to memory." "Stress didn't put this bruise on my arm," I snapped. "Marcus did." Silence stretched. Margaret fiddled with the clasp on her purse, then sighed. "Even if that's true, she's still your daughter. Families fight. Families forgive. Families don't extort." I shot back. "Families don't use children as pawns." Margaret pursed her lips, clearly uncomfortable. "All I'm saying is, Jessica swears they just wanted to help you invest wisely. Maybe you're overreacting." Overreacting. The word stung worse than Marcus's grip. It wasn't just my daughter against me now. It was my sister, too, convinced I had lost touch with reality. I stood, my voice trembling but strong. "Margaret, listen to me carefully. They've taken more than $100,000 from me over the years. They've lied, manipulated, and now they tried to force me into giving them the last of my savings. That's not help. That's abuse. Her eyes darted away, unwilling to meet mine. I don't want to see you alone. Eleanor, what if you push her away for good? I swallowed hard. Then maybe that's the price of freedom. For once, Margaret had no quick comeback. She rose slowly, her face unreadable. I hope you know what you're doing, she said finally, heading for the door. When it clicked shut behind her, the silence in my house felt heavier than ever. Jessica wasn't just manipulating me, she was recruiting allies, rewriting the story so I was the villain. I pressed a hand to the fridge, where Lily's drawing was still pinned. My arms stretched wide across the paper, tears falling down my crayon cheeks. Was this how she would remember me? The sad, lonely grandma who refused to play along? Or could I teach her the truth, that saying no wasn't cruel, but necessary? That question lingered all day until the next afternoon, when a small knock sounded again. I opened the door, and there stood Lily, alone, for the second time. There she was again, Lily. Same pink backpack, same messy ponytail, same little shoes scuffed from playground adventures. But this time, her expression was different, less bright, more serious, as if she'd aged a year since the last visit. "Hi, Grandma," she said softly. "Can I come in?" My heart clenched. Twice in 1 week? Jessica never let her wander unsupervised. Which meant this wasn't an accident. Either Lily had slipped away on her own, or Jessica had sent her as a messenger again. Still, I opened the door. She walked in with the kind of confidence only children have, plopped her backpack on the floor, and sat at the kitchen table like she lived here. "Mommy doesn't know I'm here," she admitted, almost in a whisper. "I told her I was going to Maria's house." That revelation was like ice water down my back. If Jessica found out. "Sweetheart, that's not safe. You shouldn't lie to your mom," I said, though part of me felt guilty for trying to protect the woman who'd turned her into a pawn. Lily swung her legs under the chair. "I had to. I need to ask you something." I sat across from her, bracing myself. "What is it?" She looked me dead in the eyes, her green irises blazing with a seriousness far too old for her 8 years. "Is it true, Grandma, that Mommy and Daddy tried to steal from you at the bank?" The question landed like a hammer. For 2 years, I had been bracing for this moment, though I thought it would come much later. When she was older, when the truth could be wrapped in gentler words. My throat tightened. "Who told you that?" "No one," she said quickly, "but I hear things. I hear the fights. I hear them talk on the phone." And she pulled a folded piece of paper from her backpack. "I found some letters. From you." My breath caught. "Letters?" She nodded. "Mommy hid them in her closet. But I found them. They said you love me. That it's not my fault. That you hope someday we can be together again." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Oh, Lily?" She leaned forward, her little hands gripping mine. "Why did Mommy lie to me? Grandma? Why did she say you don't care about us anymore?" Her voice cracked, and for a moment, she wasn't a child trying to be brave. She was just a little girl who wanted her grandma back. I knew then I couldn't dodge the truth. I couldn't protect Jessica's lies any longer. Lily deserved honesty, age appropriate. Yes, but honesty nonetheless. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice breaking. "It's true. They tried to take my money. But you need to understand, it's not your fault. None of this is your fault." She nodded slowly, like a puzzle piece had finally clicked into place. "That's why you don't come around anymore. That's why Mommy gets mad when someone says your name." Her lips trembled. "It makes me sad, Grandma, because I love Mommy and Daddy, but I love you too." I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. "And I love you, Lily, more than anything. One day, when you're older, you'll understand even better. But for now, just know this. Love doesn't mean giving up everything you have. Love means being honest, even when it hurts." She buried her face in my shoulder. And I realized something. Jessica's grip on her daughter wasn't as unbreakable as she thought. But before I could explain more, tires crunched in the driveway, Jessica's car. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one caught off guard. Through the thin curtain, I saw it, Jessica's silver SUV sliding into my driveway like a shark circling the shallows. The engine cut off, and the car sat there, idling in silence. Lily pulled back from me, her eyes wide. "Grandma, you won't tell her I came, will you?" I squeezed her hands. "Sweetheart, I'll protect you, always." A car horn blared, one sharp, impatient honk. Jessica wasn't coming to the door. She was summoning Lily like a servant. Lily's little shoulders slumped. She stuffed the letters back into her backpack, zipped it up with trembling fingers, and gave me one last hug. "I'll come back, Grandma, I promise." I wanted to hold her there forever. To lock the door and tell Jessica she couldn't have her until she learned how to love her properly. But I knew the law, and I knew Jessica would spin the story until I was the villain again. So I watched Lily walk out to the car, her ponytail bouncing, her small figure shrinking with every step. She climbed into the back seat. Jessica didn't get out. She didn't wave. She just put the car in reverse and sped off, tires spitting gravel onto my lawn. The silence afterward was suffocating. My house felt too big, too empty, too full of echoes. I stood at the window until the taillights vanished, then finally sat down, my knees weak. I stared at the folded drawing Lily had left on my fridge, the giant grandma with arms wide enough to hold the world. And I whispered a vow I hadn't dared to make before. I will not let her grow up thinking love has a price tag. That night, I barely slept. My phone lit up again and again, Jessica's number flashing like an alarm. I didn't answer. I refused. But around 2 a.m., a voicemail came through that made my blood run cold. Her voice was low, furious, each word deliberate. "Mom, if you think you can poison my daughter against me, you're wrong. If you keep interfering, you won't just lose us, you'll regret ever crossing me." Click. I sat in the dark, clutching the phone. My daughter, my baby girl, was threatening me. And yet, even in that terror, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades: clarity. The next morning, I made a decision. If Jessica wanted to twist the story, I was going to write my own, and the first step was walking into the support group I swore I'd never attend. The library smelled of old paper and dust, the kind of smell that always reminded me of safety. Rows of books towered like silent guardians as I followed a handwritten sign taped to the wall. Support group, room B. I almost turned back twice. My hands shook as I pushed the door open, expecting judgment, expecting whispers. Instead, I found 12 chairs arranged in a circle, 11 of them already filled. A woman about my age with kind eyes and gray curls looked up from her clipboard. "You must be Eleanor. Come in, dear, I'm Sandra." Her voice was warm, inviting. Still, my legs felt like they were made of wet sandbags as I shuffled to an empty chair. Around the circle, faces met mine, faces lined with worry, with sorrow, but also with something else: recognition. Sandra began, "This is a safe place. No one has to share until they're ready. But if you'd like, Eleanor, you can introduce yourself." The words lodged in my throat. For 69 years, I had introduced myself as Jessica's mom, Marcus's mother-in-law, Lily's grandma. Now, for the first time, I said, "I'm Eleanor Brooks, and I've been financially abused by my own daughter." The air shifted, not judgment, understanding, nods, murmured agreement. One by one, they shared. A man who had mortgaged his house 3 times for his brother's gambling debts. A woman who'd signed away her farm to her son, only to be evicted by his wife. Another who'd had checks forged in her name. Their stories were daggers and mirrors all at once. Every word carved deeper into me, yet reflected pieces of myself I thought I was alone in carrying. When it came back to me, my dam broke. The pink bicycle, the private college, the wedding I couldn't afford, the house down payment, the endless emergencies, the bruises at the bank. By the time I finished, my cheeks were wet and my throat raw. Sandra leaned forward, her eyes steady. "Eleanor, you are not paranoid. You are not selfish. You are surviving." Her words landed heavier than any threat Jessica had ever made. For the first time in years, I felt validated. An older woman named Ellen patted my hand. "You're going to doubt yourself. Honey, every day, you'll wonder if you were too harsh. But when you feel that doubt, remember how you felt in that bank. Fear in your bones, bruises on your arm, those don't lie. I nodded, gripping her hand like a lifeline. When the meeting ended, Sandra handed me a pamphlet, Resources for Victims of Elder Abuse. The title read. The words made my stomach twist. But I tucked it into my purse anyway. As I left the library, the late afternoon sun felt different, warmer, clearer, like the world had been scrubbed clean of a film I hadn't known was there. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was finally waking up. That night, my voicemail filled again, only this time. Jessica's tone had shifted from anger to something colder, darker, and far more dangerous. When I got home that evening, the blinking red light on my answering machine looked like an alarm. 5 new messages. I pressed play, bracing myself. The first was syrupy sweet again. Jessica's voice dripping like honey. Mom, Lily misses you. She doesn't understand why you're shutting us out. Please, can't we just sit down and talk? Delete. The second was sharper. Mom, you're being manipulated. Those people at the bank filled your head with lies. They don't know us like you do. Delete. By the third, her mask was slipping. You've lost perspective. You're sick. Mom, maybe it's your memory. Have you considered that you might be slipping? Maybe even dementia? My stomach turned. She wasn't just trying to steal my money anymore, she was trying to rewrite my sanity. The fourth was Marcus, his voice oily smooth. Eleanor, let's not blow this out of proportion. We're family. You can't survive without us. Who's going to help you when you're old? When you're sick? Delete. And then the fifth, Jessica again, her voice low, controlled, terrifying. Mom, if you don't stop this nonsense, if you don't cooperate, you won't just lose your family. You'll lose Lily. She won't be allowed to see you anymore. Do you want that on your conscience? I froze, my finger hovering over the delete button. This wasn't guilt anymore. This was blackmail. I sat at the kitchen table, shaking, staring at the fridge where Lily's crayon drawing was pinned. Giant grandma with long arms and tears on her face. They were turning her into a weapon. For decades, Jessica had used my love as her lever. Now she was threatening to rip it away completely. Fear clawed at my throat. But beneath it, something new was rising. Rage, not the loud, explosive kind, the quiet, steady kind, the kind that comes when you realize the people you bled for are sharpening knives behind your back. I grabbed a notebook and pen. And for the first time in years, I started to write, not checks, not pleas, but a record. Every dollar, every broken promise, every bruise, every voicemail. If Jessica wanted to play this game, then so be it, but I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. The next morning, I took that notebook and walked into Mr. Harris' bank, not to cry for help this time, but to fight back. The bank lobby smelled of polished wood and fresh toner, the kind of neutral scent meant to calm nervous customers, but I wasn't nervous this time. My notebook was tucked under my arm like armor. Mr. Harris looked up from his desk. Surprised. Mrs. Brooks, he said, standing immediately. Are you all right? I nodded, though my heart beat hard. I'm not here because I'm in trouble. I said, I'm here because I'm ready to fight back. His eyebrows lifted. Fight back? I handed him the notebook. He flipped it open and skimmed. Page after page, neat handwriting told the story of my last 10 years, dates, amounts, reasons Jessica had given me, the tuition, the down payment, the wedding, the endless emergencies, every time I said yes, and every time they broke their promise. On the final page, I'd transcribed the voicemail from last night, word for word. You won't just lose your family. You'll lose Lily. Mr. Harris' face tightened. You've done exactly the right thing. This is documentation, powerful documentation. With this, you have a case for financial coercion, even elder abuse. The word stung again, elder. I wasn't used to being labeled that way. But I had to admit, it fit. And maybe wearing that label openly was the first step toward reclaiming myself. What happens next? I asked. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. We can flag your accounts with extra protections, done. We can contact an attorney who specializes in cases like this. And if you wish, we can even file a formal report. The word report made my stomach twist. Jessica in court, Marcus in handcuffs, Lily caught in the middle like collateral damage. I don't want to destroy her life. I whispered, she's my daughter. Mr. Harris' gaze softened, but his voice stayed steady. Mrs. Brooks, she's been destroying your life for years. The only question is, are you ready to stop her before she takes the rest? I swallowed hard. For decades, the answer would have been no. But now, I thought of Peter, his quiet strength. I thought of Lily, her innocent eyes full of questions. And I thought of the bruise still faint on my arm. Yes, I said, surprising myself with how firm it sounded. I'm ready. He smiled slightly and slid a business card across the desk. This is the number for a legal advocate. She'll guide you. You're not alone anymore. For the first time in years, I believed it. That night, when I got home, the phone rang again, only this time, it wasn't Jessica's voice on the other end, it was Lily's. And what she asked me broke my heart. The phone rang just as I was setting a cup of tea on the table. My chest tightened when I saw the caller ID, unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? A small voice whispered back, Grandma? It was Lily. My grip on the phone trembled. Sweetheart, are you okay? Why are you calling from this number? I'm using Mommy's work phone. She said quickly. She doesn't know. Please don't tell her. My throat tightened. Jessica was tightening the leash so hard her own daughter had to find secret ways to reach me. What is it, my love? I asked, trying to sound calm. There was a pause. Then Lily's voice cracked. Grandma, my birthday is in 2 months. I wanted to ask you for something. But Mommy said you're mad at us. Are you? I closed my eyes. No, baby, I could never be mad at you. Never. Relief rushed through her words. Good, because I wanted to ask if you could help me buy a dress for my ballet recital. Mommy says it costs $200, and we don't have the money this month. I froze. There it was, the hook. Jessica's hand reaching through her daughter's voice, pulling me back into the same old trap. My chest ached. Lily, I said softly, do you know why Mommy wanted you to ask me that? No, she said honestly. She just said Grandma always helps when we need things. I pressed a trembling hand to my forehead. The manipulation had sunk so deep. Jessica didn't even need to say the words herself anymore. She'd trained her child to carry the script. Sweetheart, I whispered, let me talk to your mom. There was a rustle, and then Jessica's voice came on the line. Calm, cold, calculated. Hello, Mom. See? Lily misses you. She wanted to call you herself. Are you really going to say no to your granddaughter's recital dress? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles ached. Jessica, don't you dare use Lily as your messenger. If you want money, ask me yourself. Don't put that burden on her. A silence crackled through the line. Then Jessica laughed bitterly. So now you're accusing me of using my own daughter? That's sick. Mom, what kind of grandmother refuses her only granddaughter a birthday wish? I took a breath, steadying myself, the kind who refuses to be blackmailed anymore. Her laughter stopped. The mask slipped. For the first time, I heard the steel beneath her voice. Fine, she hissed, but don't come crawling to us when you're old, broke, and alone. The line went dead. I stared at the silent phone, my heart racing. They thought fear would break me, but instead, it lit something new inside me, a fire. I wasn't going to let Jessica turn Lily into her weapon. The next day, I made an appointment with the legal advocate Mr. Harris recommended, because if Jessica wanted a war, I wasn't walking into it unarmed. The office was tucked into a modest brick building downtown, sandwiched between a bakery and a dentist's practice. A brass plate on the door read, Elaine Carter, Attorney at Law, Family and Elder Protection. I almost laughed at the word elder. I still thought of elders as people older than me, stooped, gray-haired, fragile. Then I caught sight of my reflection in the glass, hair silvering at the temples. Lines etched deep into my face. Eyes tired but sharper than they'd been in years. Maybe elder wasn't an insult. Maybe it was armor. Inside, the waiting room smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish. Elaine Carter herself stepped out from her office, a tall woman with kind brown eyes and a handshake that was firm without being crushing. She looked like the kind of person who could talk down a barking dog or a screaming judge. "Mrs. Brooks?" she asked. "Yes," I said, standing straighter than I felt. "Come in." Mr. Harris gave me a heads up. Her office was lined with law books and framed photos of her family. No intimidation, no icy professionalism, just warmth with steel underneath. "Tell me everything," she said, sliding a notepad across the desk. And so I did. The notebook I'd filled at my kitchen table lay open between us. Page after page of Jessica's manipulations. The down payments, the debts, the endless emergencies, the voicemail about Lily, even the bruise from Marcus. Still faint on my arm. Elaine listened, her pen moving in quick strokes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Her eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Brooks," she said firmly, "what you're describing is a textbook case of financial abuse. And when Marcus physically grabbed you, it crossed into domestic abuse. The fact that it's your daughter and son-in-law doesn't change that. In fact, it makes it worse." My stomach clenched. Abuse. The word was ugly, heavy, but it also felt honest. "What do I do?" I whispered. "You have options," Elaine said, counting them off on her fingers. 1. File for a protective order against Marcus, citing physical intimidation. 2. File a report of financial coercion, supported by your records. 3. Legally restrict Jessica's access to your finances, she won't be able to touch a dime. And 4. Consider adjusting your will and accounts so they're protected going forward. Her eyes met mine. But the most important thing, you need to decide whether you're ready to stand your ground. Because once we start, Jessica and Marcus will fight back. Hard. I thought of Lily, her small voice asking if she'd done something wrong. Her crayon drawings of a giant grandma with wide arms. I thought of Peter. Fear is their weapon. Eleanor, don't hand it to them. I straightened in my chair. My voice didn't shake. I'm ready. Elaine smiled. Good, then let's get started. That night, when I returned home, a letter was waiting in my mailbox, with Jessica's handwriting scrawled across the envelope. Inside, the words were colder than any voicemail I'd ever heard. The envelope sat on my kitchen table like a coiled snake. My name, Eleanor Brooks, was scratched across the front in Jessica's quick, impatient handwriting. For 10 minutes I just stared at it, sipping cold tea, telling myself not to open it, but my hands betrayed me. I tore the flap, slid out a single sheet of paper, and unfolded it with trembling fingers. It wasn't a letter, it was a demand. Mom, since you've decided to be stubborn, I'm putting things in writing. You owe us after everything we've done for you. If you don't transfer at least $15 by the end of the month, Marcus and I will have no choice but to reconsider how much access you'll have to Lily. She deserves stability, not a grandmother who plays games. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Jessica. My hands went ice cold. Owe us? The words slammed into me like a blow. For 35 years, every dollar had flowed one way, out of my pocket and into theirs. I had sold jewelry, skipped vacations, worked extra shifts, pawned pieces of my own life, all for her. And now she dared to write that I owed her. I read the line again. Reconsider how much access you'll have to Lily. My chest tightened until I thought I couldn't breathe. Jessica wasn't just using my money anymore. She was weaponizing my granddaughter. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it back into the envelope, and slid it into my notebook, the growing archive of everything they had done. Every lie, every broken promise, every manipulation. This letter was evidence, as damning as a confession. But evidence didn't soothe the ache. My house was silent, too silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the ticking clock on the wall. I thought of Lily's smile, her laughter echoing in the garden, the thought of losing her clawed at my insides. I almost picked up the phone to call Jessica, to beg, to bargain, to offer anything just to keep Lily in my life. Old habits die hard. But then I saw Elaine's card sitting by the teapot. Her words echoed in my head, once we start, Jessica and Marcus will fight back. Hard. This was the fight. It had already begun. I sat at the table until midnight, staring at the envelope, and by the time the clock struck 12, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The next morning, I walked into Elaine's office and placed the envelope on her desk. Her eyes hardened as she read it. Then she looked up and said, "Mrs. Brooks, this changes everything." Elaine slid the letter back across the desk with 2 fingers, as if it were something poisonous. "This isn't just manipulation anymore," she said, her voice steady but edged with steel. "This is extortion. They're threatening to withhold your relationship with your granddaughter unless you pay them." The word rang in my ears. Extortion. I had thought of Jessica's behavior as cruel, selfish, manipulative, but not criminal. Not until now. I swallowed hard. What happens if I don't give them the money? Elaine leaned forward, her eyes locking on mine. "Then we build a case. With this letter, combined with your journal and the bank incident, we have more than enough to take legal action. If you want, I can involve law enforcement immediately." My pulse quickened. Law enforcement, court, Jessica on the stand, Marcus in handcuffs. The thought made me dizzy. But Lily, my voice cracked. What happens to Lily if her parents get in trouble? Elaine's expression softened, but she didn't waver. "Mrs. Brooks, children are always shielded as much as possible. What's more damaging to Lily? Learning the truth about her parents? Or being raised to believe it's normal to bully her grandmother into funding their lives?" The truth cut like glass. I thought of Lily standing on my porch with her school backpack, asking if she'd done something wrong. I thought of Jessica's words in that letter, cold, sharp, designed to slice through my resolve. "You're right," I whispered. "I can't let her grow up thinking this is what love looks like." Elaine nodded. "Then here's what we'll do. First, I'll file for a no-contact order to prevent Marcus from threatening you again. Second, we'll notify the authorities about this letter. It's evidence of financial coercion and extortion. And third, we'll prepare you, because once Jessica realizes you're not backing down, she'll try harder." "Harder?" My voice faltered. "She'll use every weapon she has left, guilt, fear. Lily, you need to be ready." I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and thought of Peter again. Fear is their weapon. Don't hand it to them. When I opened my eyes, my voice was steady. "Do it. File everything. I won't be their victim anymore." Elaine smiled faintly, the kind of smile soldiers give each other before marching into battle. "Good, because this is the first step toward getting your life back." That night, as I sat in my living room, the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Jessica's voice, or Marcus's. It was Lily's, whispering words that sent a chill down my spine. "Grandma. Mommy says I'm not allowed to love you anymore." The phone felt heavy in my hand. Heavier than it had ever felt before. "Lily?" I whispered, my throat closing around her name. "Sweetheart, what did you just say?" Her little voice trembled. "Mommy says I'm not allowed to love you anymore, because you don't love us. She says you only care about money now." I pressed a hand against my chest, as if I could physically hold my breaking heart together. My granddaughter, my light, repeating poisoned words she couldn't possibly understand. "Oh, Lily," I murmured, fighting to keep my voice calm. "That isn't true. Grandma loves you more than anything in this world. Nothing could ever change that." "But Mommy said," she started, confusion flooding her tone. "Listen to me, sweetheart," I interrupted softly. "Sometimes grown-ups say things when they're angry, or when they want something very badly. But love doesn't disappear just because someone says so. Do you understand?" There was silence, then a sniffle. "So, I can still love you?" Tears stung my eyes. "Yes, my love, you can always love me. And I will always love you." A tiny sigh of relief drifted through the line. Then she whispered, "Grandma, are you mad at me?" "No, never," I said quickly. "You did nothing wrong. This isn't your fault." I heard muffled voices in the background, Jessica's sharp tone, Marcus's low growl. Lily gasped. "I have to go," she whispered. "If Mommy finds me on the phone, she'll be mad. I just wanted to tell you I still love you." The line went dead. I sat frozen in my chair, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. The ache inside me turned to fury, not at Lily, not even at myself, but at Jessica, at the woman I had raised. who was now using her own child as a pawn in a twisted game. I put the phone down and walked to my notebook. With steady hands, I wrote down every word of that conversation. Evidence, proof. The pile was growing, letters, voicemails, bruises, and now Lily's stolen innocence. Jessica thought she was breaking me. She didn't know she was building my case stronger every day. The next morning, I received an unexpected visitor, someone I hadn't seen in years. And the moment I opened the door, I realized Jessica's web of lies was starting to unravel from the outside. The doorbell rang just after 9. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, I froze, my heart leaping to the worst possibility, Jessica or Marcus standing on the porch, ready to push their way inside. I almost didn't open it, but then I peeked through the curtain. Standing on the porch was Clara, my younger sister. Her hair had gone completely silver since the last time I'd seen her. But her sharp eyes were the same. She clutched a tote bag to her chest as if she'd hurried straight from the car. I opened the door slowly. "Clara?" She let out a long breath. "Eleanor." For a moment we just stared at each other. Decades of family history pressing in around us. Clara and I had grown apart, partly distance. Partly Jessica's constant whispering about how Aunt Clara doesn't really care about us. But now Clara was here. "I hope it's not a bad time," she said cautiously. "No," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." She entered, her eyes sweeping across my modest living room. The silence stretched until she finally spoke. "Jessica called me," Clara said, setting her tote bag on the couch. "She said you've lost your mind. That you're cutting her off for no reason. That you're letting strangers convince you your own family is out to get you." I felt my chest tighten. But Clara held up a hand. But then I got curious. And I started remembering all those times Jessica needed money for this or that. How it was always an emergency. How you looked more tired every year. While she somehow managed to have new furniture and vacations. So I came to see for myself. I swallowed hard. "And what do you think now?" Clara reached into her tote and pulled out an envelope. She slid it across the table. "I think Jessica is lying. Because yesterday Lily slipped this into my hand when they came over. She whispered, 'Give it to Grandma if you see her.'" My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper covered in crayon handwriting. "Dear Grandma, Mommy says I can't talk to you. But I still love you. Please don't forget me. Love, Lily." The words blurred through my tears. My granddaughter, an 8-year-old child, had written me a secret letter like a prisoner smuggling notes from behind enemy lines. Clara's voice softened. "Eleanor, I believe you. Whatever Jessica's been doing, it's wrong, and I want to help." For the first time in years, I felt something new swell in my chest. Not fear, not guilt, something stronger. Hope. Clara leaned closer, lowering her voice. "And there's something else you need to know about Marcus. Something I heard in town that might change everything." Clara's eyes darted toward the window. As if she feared the walls themselves might be listening. She leaned in and lowered her voice. "Marcus is in trouble," she said. My pulse jumped. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Clara continued, "he's been borrowing money all over town. From people you don't want to owe money to. Contractors, small business owners, even a guy who runs a loan service out of the back of a liquor store. And he hasn't been paying any of it back." I gripped the arm of my chair. "How do you know this?" Clara shrugged slightly. "One of the men he stiffed used to date my neighbor's daughter. Word gets around. And Eleanor, the word is, Marcus isn't just broke. He's desperate. Desperate enough to use Jessica. Desperate enough to use Lily. Desperate enough to use you." Her words sank like stones into my stomach. I thought back to the way Marcus had gripped my arm at the bank. His smile stretched tight for the cameras while his fingers dug bruises into my skin. The cold calculation in his eyes. The way Jessica had let it happen. Clara continued, "If he doesn't come up with a big chunk of money soon, there are going to be people knocking at his door. And you know how men like Marcus react when they're cornered. They get mean." I swallowed hard. "So that's what all this has been about. They're trying to drain me dry to cover his debts." Clara nodded grimly. Jessica's blinded by him. She'll follow him straight into a pit if you let her. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the ticking of the clock. The air felt heavy, as though the truth itself had weight. Finally, I said, "Then it's worse than I thought. I was their lifeline, and now that I've cut it, they're going to get more dangerous." Clara reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Which is exactly why you can't back down now. If you give in, you'll only sink with them." I nodded slowly, determination hardening inside me like cement. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was protecting Lily. That night, just as I was about to go to bed, headlights swept across my living room window. A car pulled into my driveway, and when I saw who stepped out, my blood ran cold. The crunch of gravel outside jolted me upright. I hadn't been expecting anyone, and Clara had already left hours ago. My first thought was Jessica. My second was Marcus. I crept to the window, heart pounding against my ribs. The headlights cast long shadows across the yard, and then the engine cut off. The driver's side door swung open. Marcus. He stepped out slowly, shoulders squared, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. The orange ember flared in the dark as he took a drag, then exhaled smoke into the night. He wasn't dressed for a casual visit. Black jacket, dark jeans, boots heavy enough to make the porch steps creak. I froze, every instinct screaming, "Don't move." Then the passenger door opened. Jessica climbed out. She wasn't crying, not this time. Her face was hard, jaw clenched, lips pressed into a thin line. She held a folder under her arm, papers. No doubt, and her heels clicked on the pavement like gunshots. They walked side by side toward my front porch. I backed away from the window, my pulse racing. My phone was on the coffee table, Elaine's card still tucked beside it. For a split second, I considered dialing 911. But before I could move, the doorbell rang, once, twice, then again, longer this time, Marcus's shadow looming behind the frosted glass. "Mom," Jessica's voice cut through the night, muffled but sharp. "We need to talk, now." My hands trembled. I had two choices: open the door and face them, or refuse and risk whatever storm they'd bring next. I reached for the phone. Before I could press a button, Marcus's voice growled from the porch, low, threatening, and enough to make my blood run cold. "Open the door, Eleanor, or I swear you'll regret it." The words rattled through the door like a physical blow. "Open the door, Eleanor, or I swear you'll regret it." My fingers hovered over the phone, heart hammering so hard I could barely hear. For years, I had given in at the first sign of anger, at the first threat, at the first tear, but tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't just the mother who always said yes. I was the woman who had finally learned to say no. I dialed one number, Elaine's direct line, and pressed the phone to my ear. On the porch, Marcus pounded once on the door, hard enough to rattle the frame. Jessica's voice hissed behind him. "Stop it, someone will hear." Elaine answered on the second ring, her voice calm, steady. "Mrs. Brooks?" My voice shook, but I kept it low. "They're here, at my house, Jessica and Marcus. He's threatening me." Elaine's tone sharpened instantly. "Do not open the door. Stay where you are. I'll call the police right now. Keep the line open." Another bang shook the door. Marcus growled, "Last chance." Jessica's voice wavered, desperate but not soft. "Mom, you're making this worse. Just sign the papers. Give us what we need, and this all goes away. Please, don't make us do this in front of Lily." Lily. The sound of her name made my knees weaken, but I caught myself on the arm of the chair. "She's not here," I reminded myself. "She's not in that car. She's safe tonight." I spoke loud enough for them to hear through the door. My voice trembled at first, then steadied with every word. "No, I'm not opening the door. And I'm not signing anything. This ends tonight." Silence, then Jessica's sharp intake of breath. Marcus cursed under his breath. In the distance, faint at first but growing louder, came the wail of sirens. Elaine's voice was firm in my ear. "Hold on, Mrs. Brooks. Help is almost there." For the first time in years, I didn't feel cornered. I felt defended. The red and blue lights washed across my windows minutes later. But as the officers pulled up, Jessica shouted something that cut me deeper than any threat Marcus had ever made. "If you do this, Mom, you'll never see Lily again." The flashing lights painted my living room in streaks of red and blue. Like a storm had broken inside my house. I stood frozen by the door, the phone still pressed to my ear. Elaine's steady breathing a lifeline on the other end. Outside, the gravel crunched under heavy boots. Officers' voices barked commands I couldn't make out. And then, Jessica's scream. "If you do this, Mom, you'll never see Lily again." The words sliced through the walls and into my chest like knives. I staggered back, pressing a hand against my mouth to keep from crying out. For years, Jessica had used money to control me. But now she was wielding the one thing more precious than any account. Any savings, any nest egg, Lily. Through the glass, I saw the blur of Marcus being shoved against the car by two officers. His cigarette tumbling to the ground. He shouted something about rights and misunderstandings, but the words were drowned by the clink of handcuffs. Jessica, however, wasn't fighting. She stood in the driveway, her hair wild in the flashing lights, tears streaming down her cheeks. But even in that chaos, her green eyes, Peter's green eyes, were locked on me through the window. "You'll regret this," she screamed. "When Lily grows up without you, when she forgets your face, that'll be on you." I couldn't breathe, my throat closed, my vision blurred, and for one terrible second, I almost reached for the lock, almost threw the door open and begged them to stop. Promised anything, everything, just to keep Lily in my life. But then Elaine's voice cut through the panic, low and steady. "Don't you dare open that door. They're bluffing. Lily loves you, no threat. No lie can erase that. Hold your ground, Eleanor." I clutched the phone tighter, tears burning down my cheeks. For the first time, I didn't give in to Jessica's threat. I didn't surrender. I stood still, trembling but unbroken, while the sirens wailed and the night carried my daughter's screams away. The next morning, I woke to a knock on the door, not the police. Not Jessica, but a small figure clutching a crayon drawing. It was Lily, and what she said when I opened the door left me speechless. The knock was soft, too soft to be Marcus, too timid to be Jessica. I opened the door slowly, heart in my throat. There she was, Lily, her backpack slung over one shoulder, hair a little messy from sleep, her small hand clutching a folded piece of paper covered in crayon scribbles. "Grandma," she whispered, eyes wide, "Mommy doesn't know I'm here." I ran. I dropped to my knees, pulling her into my arms before I could even think. She smelled like bubblegum shampoo and the faintest trace of chalk dust. The smell of childhood itself. My throat closed as I whispered, "Sweetheart, why would you run here? It's not safe for you to sneak out like that." She pulled back, unfolding the crayon drawing. My breath caught. It was me, big arms, wide smile, but this time, my figure stood between two smaller ones. One had angry eyebrows and dark scribbles above his head. The other had tears streaming down her face. "I drew Mommy and Daddy," Lily said solemnly, "and you're standing between them and me." I stared at her, my heart aching. "Lily, why did you draw me like this?" "Because you protect me," she said simply. "Even when Mommy says you don't love us, I know you do. I can feel it." Her words hit me harder than Jessica's threats ever had. Out of the mouths of children comes the purest truth. I hugged her again, tighter this time, my tears falling into her hair. "I will always protect you, Lily, always." But even as I said it, fear coiled in my gut. Jessica and Marcus would notice she was missing soon, and when they realized she had come to me, they would come storming back. I took Lily's hand and whispered, "We have to make a plan." But before I could explain, the sound of tires screeched outside, and Jessica's furious voice split the morning air. "Lily, get back here, now." The color drained from Lily's face at the sound of her mother's voice. She clutched my hand tighter, her little fingers trembling against mine. "Grandma," she whispered, eyes wide with fear. Through the window I saw Jessica storming up the driveway, hair flying wild, her heels clattering like gunfire on the pavement. Marcus trailed behind her, jaw tight, his fists balled. Lily Brooks. Jessica shrieked. Get out here right now. Lily buried her face against my side, shaking her head furiously. I don't want to go. Grandma, please don't make me. My chest ached. Every instinct screamed to shield her, to slam the door, to never let her go again. But I also knew the law. Children belonged with their parents unless the court said otherwise. If I tried to keep her now, they'd twist it against me. They'd call it kidnapping. I crouched, cupping her face gently so she would meet my eyes. Listen to me, Lily. I will never stop fighting for you. But you have to be brave a little longer. Okay? Tears welled in her eyes. Promise? I promise, I whispered, pressing my forehead against hers. This isn't the end, it's the beginning. Jessica pounded on the door, her voice cracking with fury. Open this door, Mom. You're making this worse for everyone. I stood, pulling Lily behind me. My voice, when I answered, was steady in a way Jessica wasn't used to. She's safe, I called through the door. But you don't get to storm in here anymore. I'll be filing for custody rights. Jessica, you've crossed every line. The silence outside was sharp, like the air itself had been cut. Then Jessica's laugh, cold, brittle, desperate. Custody? You're insane. No court in the world would give you rights over my daughter. You're old, you're paranoid, and you're broke. But even through the door, I could hear it, the quiver in her voice. She was afraid. I pulled Lily close, kissing her hair one last time before unlocking the door. Marcus's glare hit me like a blade, but I held my ground. She's yours for now, I said evenly, but this isn't over. Jessica yanked Lily's arm, pulling her away. My granddaughter looked back at me over her shoulder, her crayon drawing still clutched in her small hand. And in her eyes, I saw it, the flicker of faith that my promise wasn't empty. That evening, Elaine called with news that nearly made me drop the phone. Eleanor. The judge has agreed to hear your petition for emergency visitation rights. Tomorrow morning. I nearly dropped the phone when Elaine's words sank in. Emergency visitation? I repeated, hardly daring to believe it. Yes, she confirmed, based on the letter, the threats, and the evidence you've provided. The judge agreed there's enough concern to grant you a hearing immediately. If we can prove Lily's well-being is at risk, you could be granted supervised visitation or more. I pressed a hand against the wall to steady myself. After weeks of fear, after years of silence, there it was, a door cracked open, a sliver of justice shining through. When? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., don't be late. And Eleanor, bring everything. The letters, the recordings, the drawings, especially the drawing Lily made this morning. Judges look at evidence differently when it comes from a child. I looked across the room at my kitchen table, where Lily's crayon drawing still lay, bright colors against the wood, me with my arms stretched wide, standing between her and her parents. A shield. I swallowed hard. I'll be there. After we hung up, I sank into the chair, staring at the drawing. For years, I had felt like a woman drowning, pulling everyone else to safety while I sank deeper and deeper. But now, for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was fighting back. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every shadow reminded me of Marcus's threat. But when dawn came, pale and golden through the curtains, I rose with a strength I hadn't felt in decades. I put on Peter's old silver locket, the one with our wedding photo tucked inside. He had always been my anchor, my reminder that love could be real and steady. Today, I would carry him with me. As I gathered my evidence into a neat folder, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My hair was grayer than I remembered. My hands bore the marks of work and sacrifice. But my eyes were sharp. Alive. Jessica would come armed with lies. Marcus would come armed with intimidation. But I would come armed with truth. When I stepped into the courthouse the next morning, I didn't expect to see them waiting outside the courtroom doors, Jessica, Marcus, and Lily, clutching her mother's hand, looking at me with eyes full of questions. The courthouse smelled of old wood and floor polish, the kind of place where lives could be reshaped with a single gavel strike. My heels clicked on the marble floor as I walked down the hall. clutching the folder of evidence to my chest like armor. And then I saw them. Jessica stood stiff, her arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin, defiant line. Marcus loomed beside her, jaw tight, eyes narrowed like a wolf caught in a trap. But it wasn't their presence that stopped me cold. It was Lily. She was holding Jessica's hand. But her eyes, those wide, searching green eyes, were locked on me. She looked so small in that hallway. Her pink dress slightly wrinkled, her backpack slipping off one shoulder. When our eyes met, she tried to smile, but the expression faltered into something closer to a plea. My throat tightened. Jessica leaned down, whispering something sharp into Lily's ear. Lily nodded quickly, staring at the floor. My heart cracked. I knew what was happening. Jessica was coaching her, filling her head with words to parrot in front of the judge. Elaine appeared at my side, steady and unshaken. Remember, she murmured, truth is stronger than fear. Don't let their performance rattle you. The bailiff's voice echoed through the hallway. Case of Eleanor Brooks versus Jessica and Marcus Wilson. Court is now in session. We filed inside, the air heavy with tension. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair pulled back tight, adjusted her glasses as she glanced at the case file. Jessica immediately launched into tears, clutching Lily's shoulders. Your Honor, my mother has been confused. She's paranoid. She thinks we're stealing from her. But all we've ever wanted is to help manage her money responsibly. She's not well. I felt the words like daggers. But Elaine touched my hand, signaling patience. When it was my turn, I stood. My voice trembled at first, but then it grew steady. Your Honor, this isn't about confusion. This is about years of financial coercion, manipulation, and threats. I've documented every dollar, every broken promise, and this, I held up Lily's crayon drawing. This shows the truth no child should have to carry. The judge leaned forward, studying the picture with narrowed eyes. Jessica paled. Marcus shifted uneasily. But it was Lily who broke the silence. In a small, shaky voice, she said what no one expected. Grandma's not lying. The room gasped. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and echoing. Then we need to hear from this child directly. In the quiet that followed the storm, I realized something that had taken me 70 years to learn. Love without boundaries is not love, it's surrender. For decades, I believed that being a good mother meant giving endlessly. Even when it hurt, I thought sacrifice was the highest form of love. But the truth is, sacrifice without respect only breeds entitlement. By never saying no, I didn't protect Jessica, I enabled her. And in doing so, I taught her that manipulation was easier than responsibility. The hardest part wasn't standing up to Marcus's threats or Jessica's tears. The hardest part was standing up to my own fear, the fear of being alone. Unloved, forgotten. But I discovered that loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of self. When I reclaimed my voice, I realized I was never truly alone. I learned that boundaries are not walls, they are doors with locks. Allowing love to come in while keeping harm out. Saying no didn't mean I stopped loving my daughter, it meant I started loving myself enough to stop the abuse. And Lily, sweet Lily, reminded me of why it mattered. Children don't need perfect parents or grandparents who buy them the world. They need examples of courage, integrity, and love that doesn't come with a price tag. By protecting myself, I was also protecting her, teaching her that love isn't measured in dollars, but in truth and respect. So here is the lesson I want anyone listening to remember. You are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are not cruel for saying no when yes would destroy you. And you are never too old to start living for yourself. Because at the end of the day, money can be stolen, but dignity, once reclaimed, can never be taken again.